F1 fans, welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. As usual, you're with myself, Vasco, David and Harry, and in this episode we're going to discuss the most important thing that every F1 team should do in 2024. We're starting from Red Bull, and let's start with Harry. What do you think is the best thing that Red Bull should do in 2024?
I think that their only problem currently is their second driver, Checo Perez, as this is their weakest spot, I think, in the whole team. So I would suggest that they change Checo Perez with someone more consistent, more reliable, who can actually maybe be closer to Max Verstappen.
Who is this guy for you?
Well, in the driver moves episode, I said Yuki Tsunoda, but I'm not completely sure that he's the one. So maybe I would say rather someone like Lando Norris.
But if Yuki Tsunoda has a great 2024 season, do you think he deserves that second spot at Red Bull?
Definitely. I think that he's going to be a great shout for the second seat.
And David, what about you?
I don't think it's about deserving the seat. I just think Red Bull should get Lando Norris. Best available driver on the market, in my opinion. When you look at drivers that could potentially move to other teams, and we're talking about the superstar drivers, not just a guy that'll get you P2, P3 consistently. Someone to push Max Verstappen, and even when he's pushing Max Verstappen, even though you might think there might be tension, both of them fighting for the championship, but Mercedes' strongest seasons were when they had two number one drivers, and that's how they maximized their results. So I think if they get Lando Norris, they will completely dominate, and they also remove one of the best drivers on the grid from their competition. So I think it's very beneficial for them. It might be expensive, but I definitely think it's worth it for them.
These seasons were the best for Mercedes with Rosberg and Hamilton, but at the same time they were their most problematic seasons, because when there is a toxic environment in the team, I think it is not ending well, and in the end it is going to be the same as Nico Rosberg retiring, or like Danny Ricciardo went to Renault. It is never going to work for long periods of time, and I think Lando Norris would want immediately to win, to challenge Max. And I have stated previously that my opinion is Red Bull should have an alright number 2 driver, but at the same time somebody who is not going to challenge Max that much. So that is why my opinion about what Red Bull should do in 2024 is that there shouldn't be any big shakeups in the team, and they should try to maintain their form and their speed, and there are not going to be any problems for them during the 2024 season. Like American says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that is the situation in Red Bull right now, and we'll see what is going to happen in the future with Checo Perez. But for now, everything is alright for me in Red Bull.
I would just like to ask you, hypothetically, because I do expect Red Bull to be one step ahead of everyone else, but let's say they have a car that is on level playing field with other teams. Do you think they should still have that kind of number 2 driver, or do you think that will drag them down potentially in the championship, for example?
I'm not entirely sure. I need to see it first, but if all the cars are, let's say Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull are with equal cars, again I think that Red Bull need a strong number 2 driver, but somebody who is not going to challenge Max, but more like be helpful to Max, like be like Valtteri Bottas, because we know that Valtteri Bottas is a good racer. We know that Valtteri Bottas had great qualifying sessions, and he was really helpful to Lewis in some crazy moments. So I think they need to find somebody that is similar to the role Valtteri Bottas played in Mercedes. I don't think that there is a driver that would be capable to do that right now on the F1 grid, but Red Bull should aim for that. And moving on to Mercedes. Harry, your favorite team?
I think that they must change their philosophy and just not continue following the no side pod design, and also learn from their mistakes from the recent years, as We all know what happened with them. And just stick to the philosophy that they have chosen to go ahead with and hope it works out. And if not, they'll just wait until 2026 and hope that they can nail the new engine regulations.
I agree, but I don't think that necessarily, even though you change the no side pod design, which I still think they should do because it's clearly not proven to be the winning formula. I mean, it was good still. I mean, they're second in the championship, so it's not horrible. It's not like catastrophic, but that doesn't mean like they should copy Red Bull, for example, because when you're copying someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll improve it because Red Bull are going to continue developing their style and you'll just be one step behind. So I think they should change from the no side pod design, but still go with something that's unique and that could put them ahead of Red Bull rather than copying other teams.
I agree with that. And I think the best thing that can happen to them is if they stop complaining and start actually working on their car and start working with the pilots, because I think in the last season we didn't see the full potential of George Russell. If Hamilton and Russell are on the top of their game, I think it is going to work for Mercedes. But also, if they start working and they understand that they cannot catch Red Bull in the title game, I think it would be better for them to concentrate more on the next season or 2026 when the new regulation comes. Because if they sacrifice like 1 second place and finish like third or fourth in the standing, but this is helpful for them during the new regulations, I think that would be worth it for Mercedes.
Yes, I can agree with that, definitely.
And moving on to Ferrari, the favorite team of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, as Sebastian Vettel once said, everybody's a Ferrari fan. In terms of Ferrari, what they should improve, I've written down that they should focus on strategy and improve their tire wear because this has been their biggest issue over the last few years because they actually have a good car. I think they have a good car, especially start of 2022. They had the best car in the first half of the season, in my opinion, but they lost so many points on things like strategy. And strategy, it's not that difficult to do this, even though they have like all these plans, plan A, B, C, X, Y, Z. You know, it doesn't matter. Even if you have all these letters, like they're so bad at improvising. They're so bad. Whenever the other teams are making some kind of strategy decision on track, they don't know how to adapt to it, and they're just unprepared, it seems like. And they should focus on that because they can make a good car. That's not a problem for them. Even this season, they lost the championship to Mercedes by 3 points, but they lost so many points because of bad decision making. And also their tire wear has been a big issue. For example, we saw in Monza, they actually were on pace to win that race, but their tire wear let them down. And the Red Bull, it can continue going and more on its tires, and the Ferrari just can't last that long. So I think they should focus on these two key parts of their development and focus on it in the race because that's the most important part.
I absolutely agree with that. Tire wear is really important for Ferrari because we saw what happened last season. Strategy is even more important. Let's see what Fred Vasseur is going to do during the next season because we still haven't seen, I think, his full potential and his full work at Ferrari. Let's see what is going to happen during the next season. But one thing that I think should be done at Ferrari, the decision about who is going to be the number one driver or are they going to have a number one driver should be made because Ferrari needs direction and they're not going to find that direction if they're struggling with their two pilots because they have probably the best lineup right now, but they cannot use their full potential and they should start from something small like making that important decision.
It's weird because even though I would say this is Charles Leclerc's team, I mean, he joined before Carlos Sainz, he was in the Ferrari Academy, he should be the guy they're prioritizing, and yet they never do that, it seems. And it's not like it's a bad thing, they treat their drivers, the way I see it, as equal status. Carlos Sainz, he usually likes to gamble on his strategy and take anything into his own hands, and that proves to be a success as he was Ferrari's only winner throughout the 23 season. Maybe it would be better to have a number one, but I think that would create a lot of tension within the drivers.
They need to do that now in order not to have problems in the future, because let's say 24 and 25, nobody is expecting Ferrari to win, but after the regulations, if they're having the same problems with strategy and there is no clear number one driver, or at least if they say like, oh yeah, there is no number one driver, they need to state it so there is nobody who is angry after a decision is made. That's my opinion.
Your summary was perfect, guys. I do not have anything to add, and that is why I think that we should move on straight to McLaren. I will present my point. They must start the season strong and be consistent throughout it, which has not happened in the last 2 years. At the beginning of the season, both in 22 and 23, they were exiting in Q1 in qualifying, and then throughout the season they developed their car, and as we know, last season they finished off on a very high point. They were fighting for podiums constantly. So I think that if they start off strong and they are in the top 3-4 teams in the beginning of the season and continue that way, this may be one of the best McLaren seasons in recent years.
I agree with that. My opinion is that they should find a way to be more consistent, because that is their biggest problems for a long time now. And if they develop the car well and start the season strongly, McLaren can be even a title contender. And something like a bonus for them would be good if they can keep that good mood in the team, because last season they finished strongly and everybody seemed to be happy, like the team principal, everybody that's working in the team, Lando and Oscar. And if they can avoid, for example, team orders and that toxicity and problems between the drivers, and if they can make Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri work the same way as Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris work in this McLaren team, I think only good things will wait McLaren in the future if they do these things.
I think McLaren should, as Harry mentioned, start the season strong, but even if they start the season strong, like 2021 for example, they had a really good car to start the season. They did not develop and they fell off, and Ferrari even overtook them in the standings that year. And last year we saw it the other way around. They had a horrible car to start the year, and even though they had a fantastic car second half of the season, they were playing catch up the whole time. Otherwise, I think many people would consider the McLaren better than both the Mercedes and the Ferrari at the end of last season. If they start the season strong, they should capitalize on that and continue developing the car. They shouldn't take a backseat because, oh, we have a good car to start the season, we don't need to develop as much as last year, for example. No, you have to keep on pushing, because Lando Norris, who is one of the best drivers on the grid, he has proven it constantly, and if he doesn't have a title contending car, or at least a car that can win races, I don't see why Lando Norris would want to continue being at McLaren. He's been there since 2019. He has yet to win a race. I mean, they have to keep going. They have the budget. This is one of the biggest teams in F1, one of the most historic teams, and I think this upcoming season, is probably the most hype McLaren season since 2012, I guess, for fans. They have a lot of big expectations, and they need to continue building on what they have, because they also have two great drivers, let's not forget.
Moving on to Aston Martin, I think that they must use the massive investment in new facilities that they have and improve their car, because throughout last season they did not improve their car almost at all, and it stayed like at the same level, which is, as we all know, maybe fatal for a team. And I think that they should replace Lance Stroll, because we all know that he has not been performing up to par, and he needs to up his game if he wants to stay in F1, even though his daddy is the owner of the team.
I agree with that, but at the same time, I'm not like a hater of Lance Stroll. I don't think that he's like a great driver, but I don't think he's that bad either. And I think Aston Martin have bigger problems than him, and one of these problems is that Fernando Alonso. He's really old now. He's not the one for the future. And Lance Stroll is never going to be the team leader also. So if Aston Martin have planned to be one of the biggest teams in F1 after the regulations in 2026, they need to find somebody who is really good, who is really competitive, who is going to be the team leader, and offer him a contract at the end of the season if Fernando Alonso decides to retire, and give him that experience of 1 year in Aston Martin car, and after that start the 2026 season after the regulations, after everything, and have like a clear idea of where the team is going. And I think that Aston Martin should offer Fernando Alonso a job in their team. I don't know if he's going to be a team consultant or something like that, but he can be very helpful if Aston Martin want to be a serious team.
I think it's an interesting approach to what Aston Martin could do. I think Aston Martin's biggest issue was that they lacked car development throughout the season. They started off really strong, and then gradually as the season went on, their car got worse and worse, and their upgrades felt like downgrades. Why? Maybe it's because their car philosophy was similar to Red Bull's, and they didn't really understand the car. But I think that they have a big budget. I mean, Lawrence Stroll has invested so much money. He needs to invest it throughout the season as well, not just make a good car in the off season and then watch it fall off throughout the season. I think towards the end of the season, they were one of the only teams that were setting worse lap times in qualifying compared to the season before, which was pretty unusual for a team that started off the season as the most improved on the grid. So they need to focus on that so they don't fall behind, essentially, because even if they don't have the strongest car at the start of the season, they should start developing it as soon as possible. Otherwise, they'll plummet down into the bottom half of the standings. Also, I think Lance Stroll should be gone. The more you keep Lance Stroll, the more you will maintain your position in kind of plateau. And I don't really see this team moving on or going forward without a change in that second driver, because Lance Stroll, I personally don't rate him that high. He has these odd P4, P5s. He gets once every 10 races. He is very inconsistent, extremely bad at qualifying. I just don't see the benefit of having a driver that drags you down in the constructors. Fernando Alonso finished 4th in the driver's standings, and Aston Martin finished 5th in the constructor's standings. That makes no sense almost, and that is because of Lance Stroll. So if you want to get more points, invest in a better driver as well.
I agree with that, and although I said I'm not the biggest hater of Lance Stroll, he's not the guy that is going to push them forward. And with aging Alonso, they have 2 seats that need to be sorted out in a way.
This is all for today from us. We're looking forward to the next episode, which will be part 2, which we will talk about the other 5 teams. Till then, like, subscribe, and follow us in AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook, and stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you, and remember,
If you no longer go for a god that exists,
You're no longer a racing driver.